out here in the wild, where the heart beats free. We're crafting our dreams, just my family and me. From sunrise to sundown, we're making our way, building our legacy, day by day. Welcome to the Wildheart Podcast, where passion meets purpose, homeschooling home.
All right, welcome. You were still getting used to the introduction. Welcome to the Wildheart Podcast, where
passion meets purpose.
As she takes a sip, what are you drinking today? San Pellegrino.
Yeah, I was like, "Where's my label?" There it is.
I have the lemon version.
This one's the best one. It's
Cheers.
I don't read French. It's the sparkling orange and pomegranate. It's delicious.
What are we talking about today?
Stuff and things.
Specifically, what to look for in a dream homestead. So I would say, like, top questions you should ask yourself. And as we are looking for our dream homestead, I feel like this is very pertinent.
Considering that I just visited someone that's kind of in a nice area. Our Goldilocks zone, if you will.
Yeah, so before we jump into that, what have you been doing the last 2 weeks? Other than visiting rural wilderness areas.
It's like rural Canada, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I did a lot of self-care stuff over the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
I went to a spa with the sisters-in-law and the nieces, and I had a head spa, and then we visited with lots of people, which was not self-care, but, you know.
I feel like it's part of self-care, though.
Social experiences.
Social is self-care as well.
Yep, got my hair cut. Look at that. Nice. If you're on the interwebs viewing the videos.
We have a video and audio. We need to get on the audio uploading, actually.
That is a you thing.
But nonetheless, look for us in audio forms in the not too distant future.
It's not hard.
Yeah. What have I been doing?
Working.
Work, but that's the usual. I've been focused a lot on rebuilding just social contacts in terms of just reconnecting with friends I haven't hung out with for a long time. And as a side effect of that, just like everybody's kids mingling, and I feel it's good to not only have those, maintain the connections to your social circles, but also it's a way for me to kind of reset, relax a little bit sometimes, and not just focus so much on work, even though I do focus a lot on work. So,
Work.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm quite impressed with how our daughter has been adapting to new people over the last couple of days.
Yeah,
last couple of events.
She's definitely grown a lot, I feel.
She's coming out of her shell. Even today, when we were out with she knew two of the kids quite well that we were hanging out with, but she was just like...
Part of the homeschool group that you kind of started there?
Yeah, so she hung around me for maybe about 10 minutes, and then she was just like, Mama. And I'm like, yes. She's like, can I go outside? I'm like, go ahead. Like, you're here to visit. Go do whatever. Go follow the children. Like, it's fine. She's like, okay. And then she was just gone.
That's good.
Okay. So, it was good times.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the good things about all the socialization is just basically you're socializing with your old friends and they have kids, and it's a side effect of just hanging out with people like-minded and whatnot. So moving on to main topic, perhaps.
Sure. Pleasantries are done. Main topic now.
Oh, I just ran out of steam on the intro on that, to be honest.
Ran
I'm like,
out
what
of
have I
steam.
been doing?
I did stuff.
I did work and stuff.
And things.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much else to talk about. It's more cleaning. While you were out at the spa, I finished your closet.
Yes.
That was a project that I'd taken on to surprise you. I finished the office a long time ago, but the closet had never been finished. And so I took that on to surprise you when you got back from the spa.
Yeah.
Sent you off to the spa and came back and completed a honeydew item.
Because I was gone for 3 days.
Yes. And that was an experience in its own, I guess.
Yeah, you were solo parenting for
3 days.
Wow, two nights.
3 days.
2 nights.
3 nights?
2 nights.
2 nights.
I was back on the Friday.
Forever.
It was too long. I couldn't do it.
Well, our little guy's teething, so it was a long night, the 2 nights. I appreciate everything you do.
Yeah, because I didn't give you a rundown of what I do on nights.
But it was just stepping
feed.
into your shoes for a bit overnight, and the night that he wouldn't go back to sleep, and kind of laying down beside the crib and just kind of rubbing his back for an hour was fun. It was. I kept on thinking I'd watched this video about how sleeping on the floor is so good for your body because it relaxes because it makes your muscles relax. I'm like, I should try this because I'm on the floor anyway, and it's like we have like a faux wood floor. It's it's not
whatever.
But yeah, for simplicity's sake, it's laminate. But it's anyway. It's hard. The point is, and so I'm lying on the floor and focusing on relaxing my muscles, and every time I would stop rubbing his back, he would just kind of start crying. So I would continue rubbing his back until he finally fell asleep. But
was this after you fed her or no?
Yeah, so I did the standard, feed him, change him, burp them. Even I burp them still, but
you don't have to.
I know you don't. You say you don't, but I do, just because I'm used to it from the first child that we did.
Yeah.
And one of those things was just burping him every time, and he still burps, but nonetheless.
You don't need to though. That might have been. I don't know. You
The
might have
burping-
self-sabotaged yourself.
The burping makes everything stop, is what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying if you give him too much time being awake. Like, when I go in there and I feed him in the middle of the night, I feed and put back to bed.
Sabotage.
You're just kind of like, okay, let's change your bomb, let's feed you. And, like, obviously you had to wait a little bit longer to eat.
Well, to qualify this, in between each one of these attempts, I would try to put him down and, just leave the room. And
he was just missing me.
yeah, that, or he was teething, or
as he cries for me.
But yeah, all in all, it panned out. Lessons were learned, and yeah.
I'm not planning on going away for a while.
So, what to look for in a dream homestead?
Segue.
My segues aren't peak today. I feel like I'm a little underslept, but that's okay. Underslept. We
good
live
term.
in Canada.
What?
We live in Canada.
Wow.
Fact.
I have no idea.
Obviously, understanding your climate, understanding the temperature extremes. We have quite heavy temperature extremes.
Because we live on the prairies.
And that as part of a homestead, in my vision of a homestead, you would have animals. And with animals, they could only survive in certain temperature ranges.
Without
without
shelter of
exactly.
some sort. It's not like you're going to just not have shelter.
Some
for
people don't build shelter for their animals. They just let them free range all the time, right? And then they cull at the end of the season, and then you get new ones in the spring. So that's a thing. It's an option. Whether we're going to do that or not, I can't say we're going to be able to make this decision right now, but it's something to be aware of. You also have crops, depending on how much gardening you're going to be doing, and there's important decisions that the climate makes you consider when planning a homestead.
Like, we're not going to grow avocados in the middle of our forested area.
That would be difficult. I'm sure it's possible, but difficult.
Very difficult. We do not have the climate for sale.
Yeah. So, pardon my squeaky chair.
Squeak, squeak, squeak. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Did you take the squeaky one, or am I just sitting still
You're sitting
today?
solidly.
Ah, gotcha.
Let me see here.
You were too fast.
Yep. What are our long-term sustainability goals? So, I'll let you read this part.
Okay. Impact on the land. So, I think when we take a moment to consider like what our ideal way of, I don't know why I'm creating magic over here, but our ideal way of like living with the land is going to be more of like we're living in conjunction with nature. Like, we're not going to be fighting against it. We're doing or at least right now, we're considering more of a permaculture way of
life,
growing stuff and things like that, for the overall ecosystem. So I personally would like to live in an area that has, very, very lovely
forest,
mature trees. Like, I don't want to get on there with all these little dinky trees. I want mature trees that are big and tall. Forested area, but then also, some grassy space where you could have gardens or, things like that. And like,
grassy spaces can be had out of trees. You just have to chop them down.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, I don't want all of it to be trees, but I do want some mature trees.
Well, sometimes you have to get what you can. So, consideration, how much, what kind of ecosystem do you want to start with, I guess? And do you want water? Do you want trees?
I would love to have water on my property.
And
whether that's a creek, a lake, a river.
A pond that you could make.
Well, ponds aren't natural.
But yeah, they are.
No, like man-made ponds are not natural. I'd love to have a spring. Mm-hmm. If we could find land with a spring on it, I would be set. But like, good luck, because I just don't even know where to go for that. But yeah, like a water feature of some sort on the the land would be great. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
So like, with that, some people might want more fields so they could do more. Yeah, well, I'm just giving all the other options, right? So some people want to be more farming. Some people want more livestock and just have them pasture roam throughout their property. Some people want like mostly waterfront. Some people, so I mean, depending on your goals and how you want to interact with the land, that's your ecosystem is a big
determination.
Yeah, that's.
I just had the weirdest thought. Hydroponics, but on a lake.
Yeah, it's basically natural.
Yeah. My brain was like, that sounds like a neat idea.
Well, you just feed it. Well, I mean, a lot of people. I couldn't list off the things that you would grow hydroponically, but basically, you're just like things like lily pads and things like that.
No, I mean like
you could feed them to your livestock or ducks or fish.
I'm like hydroponics, but on a lake. Okay. I know you can't like tweak it with all the fertilizers and stuff because, lake stuff, but it would be fascinating. Anyways, going on. This is rad. My fairy brain is working hard today.
Community. Do you want to be close to people or far from people?
If I like the people, I don't mind being close to them, but I would like at minimum 5 acres. I want to be a farmer's field-ish, that much distance, not actually fields, away from people. If I could be plunked down in the middle of a forest, I would be happy.
Okay. how's access work with that is the question.
Well, this would be like 80 acres of land and, somewhere close by.
Because, landlocked properties are a lot cheaper than...
I know. I found one for just under 70 grand. The only thing is it's accessible only by ATV.
Yeah, so...
But it's 80 acres, and it's surrounded by crown land, so it'd be perfect for you. So, and I think it's only like half an hour away.
It's one of those things where, like, hey, that's doable, but do we want to do all of our commuting by ATV and snowmobile?
And not only that, but like the logistics of building. Like, if
you're
it's
just
only
building a log
accessible,
cabin at that point with all the surrounding logs.
I guess so. Hey, that would be pretty cheap. We could do that.
Tow
That is
out-
an awesome idea.
Tow out a trailer in the middle of the forest. She's seriously considering this now.
No, I'm considering the log cabin. I'm not considering buying the $70,000 piece of land that's 80 acres. That's only accessible to ATVs. Because okay, so like what would we do with our car? Never mind, we don't need to go down this path. Anyways, moving on.
So, community, that would be a very isolated property. The opposite of that. Or there's urban homesteading, for example.
Kind of what we're doing, sort of.
Yeah, well, doing by necessity in a sense that, like, hey, we got this house a while ago, and as our perspective in life has changed, we have kids.
You went from bachelor to partnered to children.
Yeah, so... long story short, we want something different than this house as our family grew. So, some people want to do the local community urban homesteading thing. They want to be able to.
Commune.
Some people want to do a commune. They have the community events, and there's advantages to be living in a community where you have, you have to interact with your neighbors and be a little bit more sociable. When you're more rural, I would say your neighbors become even more important because there's even less around you. So knowing who your neighbor is and knowing if you could rely on them is huge.
Yeah. I would definitely be wanting to know the community, like know the neighbors and know the community that you're around. Like at least, like assuming you have a plot of land, you have, however many neighbors around you, you'd like to know that. Or like even just like your local area. Like I love the idea of like a farmer's market, like build that community type of thing. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. How
networking with like the people around you, especially if you're doing a homestead stuff, because you are not going to be able to do everything on your homestead that will make you completely self-sufficient, which ties into our next point.
Yeah. Segue.
Yeah. Well, I'm a queen to segue. But yeah, like, and that's why you'd want to assess your goals for self-sufficiency, right? Like thinking of food, water, energy, and all that stuff.
For us, I'll speak to the energy side. So you mean energy? You have basically two options. Your whoever your power providers are in your area, or being off grid. If you're off grid, you have to make considerations like, do you want to change your appliances to work off of propane? In our climate, heat is a major concern. If you don't have heat, then
Speaking of heat, there's a heat warning on our computer right now.
Yeah, we have a heat warning in our local area. But yeah, like in the winter, if you don't have heat, your plumbing freezes, and if you don't want to have plumbing, no, your house just gets damaged.
You could also die.
Well, I'm just saying, if you don't have heat, yes, you can die, but
freeze.
The point of the matter is you can't necessarily heat as well in the winter with things like solar and wind, unless you have a large chunk of change to spend on a solar array that may not produce as much as you want it to in the winter. Like we're talking, if you want to be heating yourself with the energy you produce, it behooves you to have a secondary source of heat.
Fire.
Other than yeah, fire's definitely one. But food. How much of your own food do you want to make? Are you going to make everything, and are you going to, make your own bread? Are you going to make your own, meat and raise your own livestock?
Yep.
Or are you going to make it 40-60, what you buy versus what you get, and supplement with what you can make?
Well, and I think just tying back to the community too piece, right? Like, if you make friends with the people around you who are farmers
ranchers,
or are homesteaders, you might be able to trade or barter goods and services, right? So if we have chickens but we want some beef, maybe we can somehow, I don't know, eggs don't equate to a whole cow, but
but a year's worth of eggs might,
yeah, right? And same thing with doing bread. You can grow some grains and stuff like that, but are you going to be able to grow all the vegetables that you need, and how would you barter that, or how would you yeah. Same thing with water. I mean, here where we are, wells are pretty
available.
Common. They're pretty common. We have a pretty decent water table, so water isn't exactly...
We have to worry about flooding more than we have to worry about lack of water.
Yeah.
Which is, again, going back to the land and the ecosystem. What's your major concerns? Do you live in a desert? Do you live in the mountains? Do you live in a floodplain? It's all these are considerations of when you're getting a homestead ready. You don't want to lose it all in a natural disaster. Look at your area's considerations so that you're taking those into account in 100, 200 year history, whatever's available.
Yeah.
So we've had flood of the centuries in our province. So it's one of those things where you have to think about the history and future, for that matter. So if your goal is to build this homestead, how are you going to have legacy and succession? Do you want to... I had this idea that parceling out the land.
I'm so glad I knew what you were talking about.
The land, to basically give land and home to our kids. Children's. So, if they want, they have a home. And they literally don't have to, fight for it. They could definitely earn it. It's not a thing that they'll necessarily get for free, but it'll be there if they want it.
Here's your home. Earn it. Just kidding. Well, maybe they earn it by building it.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Maybe they earn it by, starting a business. Maybe they earn it by,
playing the harp.
Maybe.
I love that. I loved when you told me that.
Yeah.
For context, our daughter has told Tony that she wants to learn how to play the harp.
Yeah.
She is 4. And I love it.
Why not?
Nope. We'll start with a lyre, though. Because it's a, small little string instrument she can play around with.
I figured a little cheap Amazon harp might be equivalent, but
if you can find one for cheap, I
sent you one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I was at the spa.
Yeah. Speaking of learning, what are your educational objectives? Schools, for a lot of people, are a big consideration. If you're not homeschooling, then where's the closest school to you? If you are homeschooling, who cares?
Well, that's...
what are you doing instead of sending them to school? Are you integrating some form of workshops or tours or volunteer programs? Are you bringing people to your homestead for activities? Are you integrating your homestead activities as part of your learning curriculum?
I mean, it would be a really neat way to bring in extra additional income to your homestead too, especially if, you're not working like traditionally, right?
Yeah.
If you had different ways to, teach or show people about how you homestead or how you live more sustainably.
Well, I know other people have done this on other homesteads. Essentially, let's just say you have chickens. You take a few seasons to learn really the intricacies of your chickens, and it might not be the standard run-of-the-mill chicken. Usually you want to get something different, not for the sake of just being different, but for the sake of if I wanted a regular chicken, it's 100% going to be cheaper at the store. If you're going to get a chicken, you might as well make it something not necessarily exotic, but different than you can get it at the store. So that way, if you do want to market or sell it, you have that as a feather in your cap, so to speak.
Oh, busting out the dad puns.
And so once you've kind of learned maybe a specific specific chicken and the intricacies over a few seasons, you can basically have a workshop how to cull your chickens. And you could basically have a chicken culling workshop where everybody gets a chicken.
Culling party.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a party, but you learn how to process a chicken, and people pay to basically take a chicken home.
This is not PETA friendly.
It's not. Well,
we should disclaimer.
Yeah.
Have I called them in now by mentioning?
I don't know.
Shh! Just close your ears. You like the animals.
But you could take care of them too. You could have the inverse. You can give workshops of how to take care of them if you're
how to raise these exotic chickens.
Yes, so to eventually eat them.
Well, and their eggs.
But yeah, just as an idea of one thing you could do is like a workshop on a homestead. Mm-hmm. And so, how much land do we really need? Is a question that we might want to ask ourselves. 5+
acres up to 80. That's not a wide range at all.
Well, that's just a number. How do we get to the number? One is from like buffer zones between people, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes I feel like we're mostly concerned about how far we are from people, but there's other things we want to be concerned about. Some people want to know how far away their closest farm fields are where they're spraying pesticides, mm-hmm. How far they are from wild animals, if they have to worry about cougars, if they have to worry about bears. Mm-hmm. Having children running around, it's a consideration. If there's going to be a highway going to be built from your, right down the edge of your property, of course, you want a buffer zone from something like that. Yep. Is there going to be,
how big of a project or like how big of a production are you going to have, and like what the diversity of your projects are going to be, right? Mm-hmm. If you are, say, wanting to have cows, they're going to take up more space than, say, having chickens. Yeah. Same thing with growing foods and crops, right? Like if you're doing like a more agricultural type of situation, you might have more crop area than if you're doing more of a permaculture small garden type situations, yeah. Right?
And like you could start off with, let's just say, I only want to work on an acre, because you don't want to, let's just say you get an 80 acre property. You don't want to attack the whole thing. It's like, I'm going to, level the whole thing and start from scratch. It's like, well, I'm just going to work on this one little area.
My trees.
And it's some people do it. That's how they make new developments nowadays, right? Yeah. They just level it all and just start from scratch. But we're talking about city building in a lot of cases. Yes. So, what is your once you know what resources are on your property, how are you going to manage them? Are you going to every time you cut some trees, are you going to replant some somewhere else, so that you could think generationally and like, okay, well, I'm using these trees as firewood. Or what are if I use them all, or what are my kids going to use if they continue to,
Just
live on this?
clear cut type of thing.
Yeah, so you have to have considerations of resource management. That includes animals. That includes the flora. Do you want to start seeding certain plants in your forests?
Yes.
Do you want to start seeding? Would you call it seeding? Mushrooms?
Cultivating maybe.
Cultivating, sporing.
I'll spore
The
some
spores are
mushrooms.
what make them grow,
Yes,
migrate.
the mycelium.
So, anyway, all these things are questions to ask yourself. How big of a property you want to manage? More property, more work.
Just some regards.
And, well, if you want it to be, right? You could just use it as free range and grow deer on it, for example.
Right here, like we've grown them out of the ground.
Well, in a sense, if you have a garden that doesn't necessarily you don't get the rewards from, but you get deer on it every year, you're growing deer.
I just happen to have food, planted food, or not food, planted plants that they like.
And I didn't manage to. So in Canada,
I
just to
eat them.
qualify this conversation, you're not allowed to bait in where we are. So you're essentially not allowed to
Put down
put down crops and purposely bait them to a spot. If you plant a garden and forget to pick everything, or just miss a few things, that I'm sure that could be overlooked, and that could be a way around things in a statist jujitsu type method.
method. Yeah.
But going on to the demands of homesteading, physical and financial.
We'll also tie in, emotional and, mental as well, because I think just managing, everything in and of itself could be quite, mind-boggling,
Yeah.
I'll say. But I think it does, like, when you're looking at your homestead, right, like, you got to consider what the initial investments are going to be, right? If you're buying a piece of property that has nothing on it, no
Raw land.
just straight up raw land, and you need to drill a well, you need to maybe bring power, you need to get a driveway in there, you need to cut down some trees, you gotta, start building. All of those things incur costs. Oh, and then you have your septic too, right? Like, how are you gonna have stuff off?
Hole in the ground.
Well, I mean, that is an option. It's not my favorite option. But all of these things, and especially too, like, when you are starting out, you might want to just, focus on food, water, and shelter. The basics of food. We're not going to get into livestock quite yet. But then as you get in your first couple of years and you start adding, different tools or different livestock, different buildings to help out with those livestocks, or, whatever it is that you're doing on this land, all of those things incur fees. And how are you going to how are you going to pay for it all? It would be great to be able to, work in your traditional sense, but sometimes it's not.
And if you're not going to pay someone to do it, are you willing to put in the labor to do it? Do you have the skill set to do it? Or are you willing to learn?
The friends and family to come and help.
Social network is important. I'll trade my time for your time, and
sometimes it's just a matter of getting something smoked on the smoker, and people come out and help.
It's being able to manage time and balance. Understand that when you're living on a homestead, you have considerations like for vacations. If you have livestock, you have to have a babysitter for your livestock.
Yep.
You know, if you're otherwise, you might as well just cull your herd, and
Yeah, it's the middle of summer.
It's more productive than just leaving them to be
picked off, or starved.
or yeah. So you're responsible for that. In a sense, you don't want to. You know, I'm sure. It's just considerations you have to take into account when it comes to demands of homesteading.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, I just want to highlight one other thing, too, just with the demands. Financially, you know, you need to look at, like, what are your ongoing expenses as well as having a plan for emergency situations. Because just like any type of home environment, you might have certain things that go, right? Like if your generator goes and that's your only means of power, I mean, hopefully not, you got to make some accommodations for that.
You could either fix it or replace it.
Right? Both of which could potentially cost you money.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the tools to fix it or the parts you need, or if you got to replace it altogether, right? Same thing with animals. Like if you've got animals and you have something that happens to them.
You could fix it or replace it.
Well, yeah, you can fix the animal's health by going to a vet. But if not, then I guess just depending on the problem with the animal, it might just... Crop failures, too, is another one, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean...
We had the small incident of hail a little while back. You know.
The small incident that caused me quite a bit of damage on my car.
Well, I was talking about the tomatoes, but
yes, it cost us a little bit of money to make it into salsa.
In to elaborate, so like we had the hailstorm. Let's just say we had a field of tomatoes that had this hail damage. What did we do? We turned them into salsa. We still salvaged the tomatoes that we could, but the amount of time we had to spend creating the salsa to salvage them, that was, you know, if we had a significant crop, that would have been a time consideration. Mm-hmm. We might have had to cancel our plans for a day or so.
And like, if you don't get to them, then they rot, right?
Exactly.
Like, it was, I wouldn't really call it an emergency, but it was definitely one of those things where it was unplanned. And you needed to act on it.
Yeah, and like if a cow is giving birth, you know, I've attended one cow birth, and it was in the middle of a party, and so it was one of those situations where, you know, the owner of the home is like, I need somebody to help me help this cow give birth. And while at a party, I went out to go help.
No, you come.
And so, long story short, it's one of those things where, you know, you might have people over and cow just starts giving birth. It's a farm situation.
So our son wasn't your first birth.
Arguably, I didn't have as much of a hands-on with that cow that I did with our son.
Yes. Technically, he wouldn't have been your first either because we had our daughter first. But yeah. I digress.
So, if you want to learn more about home birth, we have a whole podcast about that.
Yep, we did one a couple of episodes ago.
So, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Local resources, communities, and
support.
So, you know, where are your supply chains? Most hardware stores and stores are in town, and depending on how far you are out of town or how far your homestead is, you know, there's people that homestead 9 hours away from the closest town. You really have to plan ahead for stuff because it is not close.
And I don't know if you would get delivery.
No pizza delivery for you, probably.
30 minutes or it's free, right?
I don't think since we got our pizza oven, we have ordered pizza. Mm-mm. We make better pizza at home than pizza places, in my humble opinion.
And it's so much faster.
Yeah, 6 minutes of pizza. Yeah, just having resources, whether it's your farmers,
other homesteaders.
Yeah, knowing where your schools are, if you're homeschooling or not, where you are getting anything from hardware to food, where you can sell your goods and wares, if you provide services, who are your her clientele, how far they will and will not drive, and are you willing to commute to where you're working if you are working somewhere further?
Yeah.
All these things are important. What else? Yeah, I mean, sorry, I got sidetracked here.
There you go.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think just overall, like, looking at, where you want to be, what the environment's going to be like, and just really not starting slow per se, but like really doing your research into what you're looking into. Like, I know you and I, we never really sat down and wrote down a list, but we have an idea of like what we'd be looking for in a homestead, what we'd be looking for in, a piece of land versus, if we had to, do a land with a house on it.
A fixer-upper, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
depending.
The advantages of raw land versus land with a house. Raw land, you get to do it exactly how you want it. The downside is all of that costs money and time. If you buy a property with a house on it, it might not be exactly what you want, but you can make it into what you want, with some considerations. So what's more important to you, the house or the land?
Well, and I think too, like, at least in our experience, it also comes down to the price, right? If I'm buying a piece of land for, $150,000 to $200,000, and then I'm expecting to spend, probably closer to $300,000 to $400,000 on top of that, like, it might just be more economical for us to just go straight into buying a house on land, right?
Yeah.
Find a piece of property we like.
Yeah,
and then that way you don't have the initial upstart costs of building that home, or like I said, getting the power on there, getting the septic, getting the well done, doing all these things, and building the home and all that stuff. Like, yeah, like I know when you built this place, it was a little bit cheaper to build than it was to buy. I think it's the opposite now.
Well,
or at least they're on par.
Yeah, I mean, so this was the home we're in was essentially it was a built home. I got to make
sorry.
Smack.
No. You got to make all the choices.
Yeah, no, well, no? Yes, no. It's a cookie cutter house. Yeah. So there's options that you get. And depending on the builder, if you go with a builder, if you're not building it yourself, you get basically, A, B, C, D. Then you have options 1, 2, 3 in each one of those. So, you basically could choose, your kitchen cabinets, your flooring, the some modifications on the home like alcoves or different ceilings or different patios, just stuff like that. Then there's like complete custom homes where you're paying for every little thing and they're making it a la carte, if you will.
Yeah.
And those always cost more.
No, because you're paying for every little thing.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're willing to start with the bare bones, if you will, and if you have the skills to build out from that point or fill in, if it's just we had an unfinished basement in this home, and if you're capable of finishing basement, then you could basically have a little bit cheaper initial cost. If you put a little bit of sweat equity into the basement, you can have double your
sweat. Oh, I can't make it.
Swequity?
Yeah, there you go. My mouse wouldn't make the word. Swequity.
Yes, swequity.
Swequity. Sorry. I told you, fairy brain today. Yeah. It's entertaining.
And so, yeah, that's the same for outbuildings, for power sources, for your garden and your livestock and all those things. You can get turnkey homestead in some cases. Farmer Joe decides he wants to retire. He needs to move back to the city to be closer to grandkids, hospital, pick your choice. And and he wants to sell his farm and leave it in good hands. That is an option. I'd be okay with something like that as long as it fit what we wanted. It's just, obviously that's a lot harder to find, and you're not going to find that on like the MLS listings or anything. You're just going to you have to be talking to Farmer Joe or his son and daughter or whatever. It's like, oh, Farmer Joe's going to be moving in, like he wants to really sell it to somebody who cares about his land. We're interested. Like, how can we work this deal out? And with that might come aspect of okay, well, he has a farm and he has these obligations, and that could be anywhere from like a tractor payment to he still owes on this outbuilding, and maybe there's 5 guys that can hunt on his land. So like, are you going to honor these? Yes or no? And it's one of those things where all these things come with considerations. So all things to consider.
It would need to be an interview with all 5 of these hunters to make sure that they're decent people.
Yeah.
Especially with my children running around.
Oh yeah, it's a consideration. What resources can you think of off the top of your head that you've been kind of looking? Obviously, we look at the listings.
Yeah, we look at realtor.com or whatever it's called.
Yeah, and so I listen to a ton of podcasts when I can. So, I mean, there's YouTube as well, obviously. Yeah. Take a look, do your research.
I know I find a lot of listings on Marketplace on Facebook now.
Yeah.
They spam me. It's
Facebook
like, look, there's a new thing.
Facebook is like the new Kijiji or what's the American one? That used to be Craigslist.
My brain was like AliExpress.
No, that's the non-American one.
I don't think you can buy land on it either.
Who knows?
I wouldn't.
The
want
AliExpress
to.
of land would be just like postage stamp somewhere.
Yeah, it'd be like, this is.
That's like AliExpress would be like buying a square foot on the moon. It's like. What was the one thing though? Things like I mentioned it before, but. If you live in a floodplain, if you live in things like that, there's like maps that show you where the floodplains are. There's maps that show you where considerations like that are that you have to basically be aware of. Mm-hmm. You don't want to build your homestead and have it all flood away. That would not be ideal. And if you are building in a floodplain, making sure that you build high enough that it's less of a less of an issue. Like if you have a basement, it'll still potentially flood. It's just it's better to get a whole bunch of fill and build up and before pick the hill instead of the valley to build your house in.
Well, I would say too, just in regards to knowing where all those things are, like
walk the land before you buy it. I keep on hearing that. Sorry, go on.
Okay. I'm like trying very hard not to lose this thought.
And you did.
Hold on, it'll come back to me. You just can't talk for a second. No, it was about. Oh yes. So knowing your rules and regulations, bylaws, whatever around the areas that you're in, like. In our province, there's the municipalities that you'd be belonging to. And if you want to, say, for example, you want to hunt on your land, you should look up the rules and regulations, bylaws, whatever, regarding that specific thing for the municipality that you're going to be living in. Because some places are okay with that on your own land. Some of it's not. Same thing with, like, for example, septic.
Building anything.
Well, building, or I was speaking specifically to septic, because a lot of communities now, depending on how close you are to the main city here, don't allow septic fields anymore because it's an ecological issue. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, so what are you relying on then? You're going to have a septic tank, and then that's going to be an additional cost where you have to get it pumped all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing with, like you were saying, the buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are your rules on building?
Some areas are like, hey, you want to build something? Pay me.
Yeah.
And the other one's like, do what you want as long as you build it to code.
Yeah.
And, sometimes they want inspections. But, all these things, in terms of resources, make sure to look them up. I don't have any books other than code books.
Well, I think a lot of those resources are, like, a lot of the rules, regulations, flood maps, things like that are all usually available on your local websites, like, for your area.
Yeah. City, province,
municipalities, historical, I would say even archives, historical archives.
Yeah. So if you have any stories of you getting your own homestead and maybe things you've learned that we haven't mentioned, let us know. I'd love to hear them because, we're in the process of looking for homesteads. We
Seriously.
want to know what to look for. If we miss something, we do want to know. These are just things that we've considered in the time that we've been looking, not having found our property yet.
Well, I'd say we're within the next couple of years.
Yeah.
We want to find something.
Yep. Yeah. If you have questions, let us know as well. We'll do our best to answer them. Mm-hmm. And on that note,
ta-ta!
Was there any final sign-offs, or what do we get? What do you have planned for the next 2 weeks?
Why did you get really quiet?
what? Do we want to do a? I know. I feel like we did this last episode, and I don't remember what we actually were going to talk about.
I don't remember.
I just had a flashback. I'll have to go back and listen.
Yeah, you're gonna have to listen to our own ramblings.
Maybe if I promised something for this episode that we were supposed to talk about, maybe we'll talk about that next week.
So committal. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm up to for the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
It's a busy week this week.
Yeah.
I exist. I exist through life right now. It is between children and the occasional time I go to work and garden. It's basically where I'm at right now.
That's okay. That's a good place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for tuning in. And
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
We'll see you. We do this podcast every second week on Wednesday.
Yes.
So tune in if you want to see us live. Check us out. Take care.
Bye. Hold on. Unmute. There you go.
We're writing our story with every turn of the wheel. So join us on this journey where the wild hearts roll. In the Wildheart legacy, you'll always feel at home.